At least we are now started. That's the good news. Where are stuff? Where is stuff? Where are stuff? Whoa, man, I was like, what the hell happened? For a second, it flashed like the chart from last week. Anyway, not particularly anything good going on here. A little bit of catch up from the Russell. The VIX says 18.9 is not. It's not saying don't worry. It's saying I'm a little bit concerned. The daily charts, though, I mean, what more can you expect? This is an all-time high for the NASDAQ, all-time high for the S&P, just below it for the Dow, just below it for the Russell. Everybody's happy, happy, happy. They seem so anyway. The dollar, and this is even with a strong dollar. Where is my dollar? Look at the dollar, all the way up around 104. So the dollar is strong. The indexes are happy. Oil doesn't look, well, oil doesn't look good on a daily chart, but it's catching up to 68.61, which is very nice because still have 2 contracts left, I think. 2 contracts, average 67.47, so it's up $2,160 on what's left. And we've been in and out and in and out and in and out. And we can talk about that a little bit. That's a very important trade to understand how that works. We'll talk about that. We also have to talk about, oh, I should remember what we need to talk about. I only had a pen. Where can I make a note? Oh, I bet I can make a note in the question box. Yes, watch this. I'm going to pretend to answer. And I'm going to say, what am I going to say? If I can remember what it was I wanted to talk about. Lilly with their weight loss drugs, right? And AMD with their disappointments. And there's one other one, but I forgot. But all right, sorry, we'll get to it. I know it's in chat, so I'll remember it in chat anyway. And then I can just send it all. And now I can remember if I need to. I can always see that we meant to talk about stuff there. So I got a little note screen, even though it kind of isn't meant to function that way. So what else is going on? Natural gas. Look at natural gas. What a crazy thing to trade. It goes up and then it goes all the way down because we didn't have any disruption from the hurricanes. Then it pops right back up on the new contract because we might have more hurricanes and then people start getting disappointed again or whatever. It's a crazy thing to trade. It really is. So, you know, what this is a rollover to the new contract, and the new contract is back up because now you got a whole nother month where something might disrupt the flow of natural gas. But I think we're kind of done with hurricanes. And oh, and by the way, and yeah, and you don't, it's not something you guess about. What is this? Trust wallet extension? Wow, why is that there? That's weird. I don't remember doing that. Hurricane watch. Hurricane tracker. There's nothing, see? That's a big nothing. What is it so annoying? It's every time you look at this one, it does that, doesn't it? So that's a kind of hurricane trade. So you can see it until they decide to put advertising in your way. That looks National Hurricane Center tracking in the Caribbean. How about you say Atlantic Hurricane Tracker? How about we say that? See, Google is getting less and less useful. It used to be if you said something like that in Google, it would go right to it, no problem. Now it's like a whole thing to try to find something in Google because you have to fight your way through the ads, you have to fight your way through the useless links. And that's really not necessarily Google's fault. That's kind of like the bots are now messing with Google's algorithms, and it can no longer, there's just so much crap that it can't wade through. Oh, but that's Google's fault. They got to keep up. So I'm still going to blame Google. There's nothing. There's not a thing right now. All right, so that's not good for people who are hoping for storm disruptions. disruptions. Let's get the words right. Although we might get hit by a train. Let's see what happens. La -di -da -di -da. All right, so what's going on today? Let's see what's happening. Try to have some sort of a cohesive sort of thoughts here. I like this one. That's a good one. I make these with the AI. It's great. So I didn't, it's my new thing now. If it's a webinar day, wow, I'm not going to sit there and write the morning report, because then by the time I get to the webinar, I'm exhausted. So now I just relax in the morning and I do my reading and let Cosmo write the morning report, because frankly, he's pretty good at it. He is pretty good at writing a morning report. I also like about it, and oh, by the way, here, tell me if you don't, but I like the fact that I can just go rambling on doing it. I can say deep dive now, because all the podcasts say deep dive. But I can now just sort of decide to write about one topic in the morning, and I don't have that urgency to get back to the market, because I can easily have Cosmo write a report for me about the market. So I don't have to be the one that worries about let's make sure we talk about all the nitty gritty. He's incredible at talking about the nitty gritty. So I can explore a single topic once in a while when I feel like it, which I really enjoy, frankly. If you guys hate it, tell me, but I kind of like it. It helps me really dig into something, and I think it's good to dig into things once in a while, not to just be superficial. When writing the morning report, I don't really have time usually to get into deep things on topics and such. So we're tariffs. So yeah, the big news today is the EU did in fact slap tariffs on the Chinese imports, because Volkswagen's in crisis, 40% drop in earnings this quarter. I want to point out, even though I use this chart, I do want to point out how misleading charts like this are, because I don't know where they get this number from. Let's put it that way. Number one, because here, if we assume that this color and this color are the same, all Chinese brands in Europe in 2023 are here. Okay, nothing. All of a sudden they're here. They're 10% of the market. They went from 2% to 10% of the market. All of a sudden. But then this chart is super, super misleading, because this chart is only showing you up to 25%. So their share is about half of 25% is coming from China, and half is coming from other brands. Okay, so these are all the Chinese brands are going to make up 10% of the market, and as their forecast without the tariffs, now the tariffs are going to screw that up, but they were forecast to climb from 10% to 20% over the next 3 years. It looks in the chart like everybody's getting squeezed out of the market, but no, China's going from 10% to 20%. Everybody else will lose some share unless they fight back. It's not like they're wiping out the entire auto industry. The chart only goes up to 25%. Who are they wiping out? And frankly, they're taking almost all of the market share that China is gaining is coming from the other brands. And not by the way, not from BMW and Tesla and Volkswagen and whoever, and MG. No, those are not the ones. It's the other brands that they're kicking the ass of. That's what this chart is showing you, is that Chinese brands are kicking the crap out of the old and not very important brands and gaining market share against them. It doesn't say anything about how they're doing in comparison to these brands, the rest of the auto industry. So it looks a lot more alarming than it is, and the problem is these are the kind of charts they use to go up in front of Congress, Parliament, whatever the hell they're doing over there. What do they call the EU thing? It's Parliament, right? So, they show these charts, and even fairly intelligent people, like you guys are fairly intelligent people, even fairly intelligent people are, I'm going to give you that, fairly intelligent, right? No, but I mean, you guys are very intelligent for the most part, because this is a high-end options trading site that requires a certain minimum to get into. So, you look at these charts, and even I was looking at it before, and I was like, wow. And then I'm like looking at the side, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. When I first saw this chart, I was like, holy shit. Then I'm like, no, that can't be right. And then I looked at the numbers and said, oh, I see what they're doing here. They're magnifying. The forecast changes gears and changes perspective and magnifies it and makes it look much, much worse than it is. It's not right. You're not supposed to do that. So it's a weird thing. You always have to be very aware of that when you're looking at charts and graphs and numbers and everything. Lies, damn lies, and statistics, as they say. But whatever. Now, oddly enough, Tesla, because he's been kissing China's ass for years, they make so many cars in Europe that it's affecting them also. So the reason the tariff is lower on Tesla is because they don't make all their cars in Europe. Boyd doesn't even make all their cars in China. Boyd doesn't even make all their cars in China. But these guys do. Geely, Xpeng, and SAIC, they make most of their cars in China, so they get hit hard. Here's the real thing to look at. What's going on right now in the first half of this year? Well, Boyd is kicking everybody's ass. Double Tesla sales. Total number of cars, 1.2 million. Total number of cars, 625. And revenues, by the way, in this quarter that they just announced, Boyd surpassed Tesla in revenues. But they have to sell twice as many cars because Tesla charges twice as much per car. So imagine if Elon Musk had actually done what he said he would do and made his cars for $25,000, he'd have 1.2 million in sales. But instead, he still sells $40,000 and $60,000 and $100,000 cars, and he has 625,000 sales. So far less, units. So 625,000 units. So he has far less units, half the number of units, but revenue-wise, he's keeping up because his cars are twice as expensive. It's a pretty simple concept. So what does Elon Musk do? He runs under Donald Trump's tariff skirt. That's what this is all about. That's what this bromance is Elon Musk wants Trump to tariff the crap out of imports so that he has a free range on the US market and can keep selling $40,000 and $50,000 and $60,000 EVs. If it wasn't for that tariff, just like when I was a kid, and we all bought Japanese cars because they were cheap. The cheapest cars were Japanese cars, a Honda, a Mazda, a Subaru, whatever. They had a reputation for being terrible and blah, 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 but we didn't care. We did not care. We were 18, 20 years old, whatever, and we wanted a car, and the way to buy a car was to buy a cheap-ass Japanese car. And everybody would make fun of you for driving a Japanese car, but you had a car, and it took you places, and in reality, it didn't really break down that much. It wasn't like the wheels flew off or anything like that. They had a worse reputation than a US car, but they were still definite, drivable, decent cars. And what happened after that? So this is, I was 16 years old. I got my first car when I was 15, actually. My first car was a Barracuda. I was American. But eventually I ended up getting a Mazda. I had Honda. I'm sorry, my first crap car was a Honda. That was my first total piece of garbage car. It was a tin box. I'm surprised. The engine literally melted when I was driving it home from college. Like it was the heater hadn't been working. I don't know how they work. Okay, the heater hadn't been working. I bought it used. God knows how many miles were on it or whatever. I bought it for $800. But when I was driving home from college, the heater was not working ever on the car. So I just, that's solvable. You just wear your winter clothing in the winter in the car. So, it's like, I don't know what people were worried about. It's like, so what? You don't need a heater. You just drive around in a freezing cold car and wear all your ski wear, basically. Luckily, I was a skier, so I had tons of good stuff to wear in my car. But in the summer, not having a heater was a different sort of problem because I drove home from college and it must have been like 90-something degrees out, and it was a 3.5-hour drive, or a 4-hour drive in that car because it wasn't even fast. And it was a Honda Matic. Like you had to change from first. It only had 2 gears. It had first gear and second gear, and you had to use it though. It wouldn't like automatically do it. You had to actually change from first gear to second gear. And anyway, so I'm driving home, and literally the engine, which I found out afterwards, was made of aluminum. And I don't mean aluminum like die cast cool aluminum, like when you open up a Porsche and you're like, ooh, look at that. No, I mean like aluminum, like a Coke can that had been bent into the shape of an engine. So the engine melted because there was no cooling system. For some reason, they relied on a cooling system to cool the engine. And whatever the circumstances, it's a little vague now, but the bottom line is the engine block literally melted. The aluminum fused, it got too hot, and the whole thing was a brick. The whole car was just useless. It died on my way home. So that was my first fun experience with Japanese cars. But what did I do? I drove right down. My parents literally picked me up on the highway. My dad paid the guy to go take the car to the junk shop, and we went to his father's friend's Mazda dealership. And so my next car that I bought was a Mazda GLC, and that cost $3,000, and I paid it on time. Of the $800, I paid it cash. But the $3,000 car was like some $100 and something a month to pay it off. And that was my next car. It was like a bubble back Mazda GLC, and it was orange. That was fun. So I was really. I mean, you know, I was good looking because I didn't care what kind of car I had. I was like, you know, I'm in college. I'm like, yeah, I got an orange car. So what? That's confidence. Anyway, so my GLC though was a great car. I love that car. It wasn't new either. It was a used car, and I drove that for probably I think the rest of college. I think I did. I had that for the rest of college, and after college, when I got my first job, I got a Saab. Is that right? Yeah, I got a Saab. That was my next car after that. I like that Saab. So where were we? Chinese cars. Yes, right. Okay, so cheap Chinese cars like Boyd, if you didn't block it, would allow my children, like my daughter Jackie right now, is looking for a $10,000 car. And I'm very much against that. I do not like her driving a $10,000 car because I've driven the crappy used cars and I know what happens. But she, like many people in her generation, just out of college, she's very anti-debt. She doesn't want to have any debt. So she's got $10,000. She wants to buy a $10,000 car with her $10,000. And so she's looking for a good used $10,000 car. She could be buying a Boyd, a new one or a barely used one or whatever, if it wasn't for the bullshit that we don't allow those cars in the country. And it's not because they're not up to US standards, because they absolutely are up to US standards. We're just preventing them from coming into the country to protect the much higher prices of the American cars that are in this country. So we are screwing the poor people to make the auto companies richer, to maintain the gigantic profits of the car companies. So we're protecting the gigantic profits of the big auto companies by screwing the poor people who are trying to buy their first cars and looking for a cheaper alternative. They can't have it because they're not allowed to make that choice. Although if a rich person wants to go to Italy and pick up their Bugatti or whatever, they can do that. That's totally fine with the government. So the whole system is, and this is exactly what they're telling you about Trump's tariffs, right? It's like when you do tariffs, you basically are hurting the people who can't afford to make a choice. That's who you're hurting. People, you know, well-off people making $100,000+ a year are not going to care whether or not they can buy a Boyd. It doesn't matter to them. They weren't going to buy the Boyd anyway. It matters to the other people, the bottom 90%, the people, the bottom 80% at least, the people in the lower ranges of the salaries in this country who are desperately trying to figure out how they're going to make their car payments, insurance payments. We're taking away the choice from them to have an inexpensive car. So it is a gigantic tax on the people who can afford it the least to benefit the people who don't need any benefit. And instead of us learning to make a better car, instead of the shareholders, our class of shareholders, to go to Ford and GM and so on and say, why don't you make a goddamn car that's the same price points as Boyd? Instead of doing that, we just tariff the crap out of Boyd and say, oh, go ahead and make much more expensive cars while Boyd makes cheaper and cheaper and better cars, which is exactly what Honda and Toyota and Subaru and everybody did back when I was a kid. And all of a sudden, 10 years later, the Toyotas were the luxury cars. And everybody wanted them. So I remember when it started, when the Camry came out, and I must have been just still in college when the Camry came out, and all of a sudden people started wanting this car like more than almost anything else. That's when they made the turn, when they released it, when Toyota put out the Camry, and everybody's like, what the hell? You know, it's like, this is like a luxury car for $20,000. That was a turning point for Toyota, but then Honda did it. In fact, Honda introduced the whole, Honda had such a bad reputation, not anymore. My mom has a Honda, in fact, she's got a CR, I don't know, she's got a Honda mini SUV. But back then, Honda had such a bad reputation, they brought out their good cars under the Acura name. You know, so Toyota's reputation wasn't as bad as Honda, but Toyota was known for some really crappy cars, you know, and they just turned it around. They just kept introducing better and better and better cars. And then there was Mazda, of course, and Mazda, and when I got my RX-7, I mean, that's right, I had a Saab first, and I had an RX, then my next car was a Mazda RX-7 convertible, and I loved that car. That was one of the greatest cars I've ever owned. Freaking amazing, with a rotary engine. Headphones in the not headphones, speakers in the headrest. So it had, like, you know, had a full speaker system, but then just to make sure you got like perfect balance, it had a headphone on each, a speaker on each ear at the headrest. I mean, every single detail of that car was well thought out. Anyway, so, because what did the Japanese do? The Japanese learned and adapted and improved, okay? What do tariffs do for you? They mean you don't have to learn, adapt, and improve, and you can be damn sure that the American companies represented by blue, here they are, and Tesla, sort of. And by the way, the Tesla, don't forget that they make a ton of cars in other countries, so this isn't even really US made. But Ford and Jeep are the two biggest sellers down here, and that's pathetic. That is really pathetic. That's America. And where's Japan? Japan's also not there. If it wasn't for Toyota, there wouldn't be any representation for Japan in EVs. Look at that, Sweden's kicking Japan's ass. That's sad. And Volvo. When Volvo's kicking your ass, you got problems. And here's Germany. Germany's got some biggies, right? Is BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes, and Audi, and then China. But China is like China. And why is that? Because when you know what it is for the most part, in this country, you've been reading all year that EV sales are a failure, and that the whole thing is bullshit and the environmental movement is not there and blah, blah, blah. It's completely not true. But we have a corporate media in this country that lies to you on a regular basis, that does not give you the correct facts. We have 50% of the government officials lie to you and tell you things that are not true. Okay, and 50% of the voting public believes any bullshit about that. And if they decide they don't like green, they don't want to hear about this global warming and green stuff and environmental stuff. God damn it, in Florida where I live, it is illegal for the government to tell you that there's global warming. It's illegal for them to discuss the very idea that we should be preventing global warming or that we should be doing something about it. It is a crime in Florida because Ron DeSantis passed bills to prevent the government from mentioning global warming or repercussions of global warming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is insane. Whereas China said, global warming is a very big problem. We are going to deal with it. And one of the main ways we're going to deal with it is by turning over our entire fleet of cars to be green. And we're going to do it in an accelerated time frame by subsidizing businesses and helping any way we can and building infrastructure and so on and so forth. And so what happens? Only a few years later, they are the leaders in EV sales globally. And it turns out that there are, in 2024, a 25% increase in EV sales over the last year worldwide. So it's not that it's not happening, it's that we're missing the bus. That we are lagging so far behind that it's easier to pretend it's not happening than to admit that we are falling further and further and further behind due to lack of ambition, due to lack of infrastructure, due to lack of commitment on the part of the companies, due to backtracking on climate commitments and mileage commitments and so on and so forth. That's what's going on. That's the truth. And even as I say it, you don't want to hear it, you want to think, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. It's not. Okay, we pretend that global warming isn't the most important thing happening on this planet. We pretend that there's no need for progress, that we pretend that we're doing enough. We're not. In fact, the UN, I don't want to get off on this track. UN climate 50%. The United Nations already include 50% for greenhouse gas emissions, carbon dioxide. Oh, come on. They just said it. Oh, so it'd be news. If they just said it, it should be news. Oh, frick. All right, I don't know where it is. But anyway, some UN something just said that if we don't cut emissions by 50% over the next like 4 or 5 years, we're never going to make it. That's basically what they said. They said, basically they're like, we are all going to die, and we have to drastically cut our emissions right now, or we don't have any scenarios where the planet survives. I'm sorry, the planet will be fine. That's the other funny thing about it. The planet's fine. The planet is totally fine because the planet, a planet can be Venus, or it could be Mars, or it could be Mercury, or it could be Pluto, or it could be Jupiter. A planet can be a lot of things. It'll be fine. What it can't be, though, is a viable host for human life and animal life that we, the kind of an animal life within the ranges we're aware of. So the ecosystem that we inhabit needs a certain kind of planet, and this planet is not going to be it. And we have no other planets that we know of that we can get to that would fit the bill. And no, you cannot terraform another planet, and no, it won't help if you build a great big space shield between us and the sun and blah, 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 blah. But whatever. Anyway, like I said, I don't want to go down that path. That's a depressing path. Enjoy it while you can. That's what I say. So here's a tech earnings spotlight. Here's Elon. Every night they have to go through this because unfortunately, once Trump runs out of gas, you got to charge him back up. So Google. Speaking of people who have to pivot, so search is slowly but surely being destroyed, and for very good reasons. Oh, here's a great example, if I can find it. Here we go. Let's see. There's something about the UN warning we need to cut emissions by 50%. I didn't spell it right. Yes, the UN just released a stark warning in response to emissions global emission must be cut 42% by 2030, 57% by 2035 to maintain any hope of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees C. So there you go. There's the actual facts. So meanwhile, I asked Google the same question. And, oh, I tell you what, I'll just to be fair, let's pretend, because everybody's not going to understand it, so there's really no point. But just don't want anybody to say I didn't treat Google fairly. So spelling mistake and all. See, so this is news, all, how about all? Oh, okay, there you go. 5-degree Paris cut by 4. Okay, so there's the article. It does come up under CBS News. And here it is again. So it's anyway, Scientific American, who people used to respect, but now we don't respect anybody. It doesn't matter if it's Scientific American, it's a magazine that disagrees with what we want to believe, therefore it is fake news, right? The fact that Scientific American is a respected magazine worldwide for 100 years and the de facto place to go for correct and accurate and up-to-date scientific information, that's all out the window now because we only believe it if it says what we like. And maybe not you and maybe not me, but I mean we, the people, we, the voters in this country, do not accept the fact that a Scientific American tells you that you need to cut emissions by 60%, that it's true. They said it last year. Now it's coming around again because the UN just did a study that backs up what Scientific American said. They said it last year. We could have started last year, but nobody wanted to do it. They want to do another study. So you do another study, and now the UN says it, but that's no good because that's the UN, and we know you can't trust the UN because they're all out to get us or whatever. I honestly don't even know why we don't trust the UN anymore. I'm not quite sure how that happened. But for whatever reason, we're not supposed to trust it. It's insanity. It really is. Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Kimmel last night did he did a whole monologue for Republicans. Basically, he did a monologue where he was just talking directly to Republicans and being like really matter of factual about Donald Trump and saying, you know, well, here's the fact of this and here's the fact of that and blah blah blah. And you know, not in a mean way, not like a make funny way or anything like that. To be like laying out the case and saying, this is the guy. Just be aware that this is the guy you're planning to vote for, blah blah blah, and show it. You know, it's compelling to me because I'm a Democrat. But honestly, I saw it, and unfortunately, I think they rely too much on stuff that's just things you've already seen, notes you've already had, and I don't think anybody knows how to deal with it. Nobody knows how to deal with Donald Trump. How do you present a case when I think? But the problem is really it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you say to those voters. It doesn't matter what you prove. It doesn't matter what you show. It doesn't matter if you have clips. It doesn't matter if you have evidence. It doesn't matter if you're supported by 1,000 expert witnesses. It doesn't matter if his own generals tell you he's nuts. It doesn't matter if his own staff that he appointed, when he said, I only appoint the best people in the world. I always pick the greatest people to work with me, blah, blah, blah. And it's not the first group ended up getting fired because they wouldn't do what he said. He brings in another group, they won't do what he says. The next group won't do what he says. It's not a couple of people. It's like 150 different people who work as an administration in high offices are all saying in various ways, this man is not fit to be a president. That they've already seen him attempt to do things that should never be done by a president, and they're extremely concerned that with the new Supreme Court ruling and so on and so forth, that he will start doing these things that he said he was going to do in his first term. And when Marco Rubio goes around and says, Trump says a lot of things, but he doesn't do them. No, he tried to do them. He just wasn't allowed because there were sane, rational people at the table. Ultra conservative, hardcore people that they may be, they still weren't that far off that they were going to let him just suddenly, like go into countries and invade or arrest people for no particular reason and so on and so forth. He wanted to do all that stuff. They just wouldn't let him. They kept pointing to the Constitution and the Supreme Court and said, you can't do this, you can't do that. So what did he do? He spent 4 years altering the courts. And now he has a court that's willing to alter the Constitution, so there's nothing he can't do. And not theoretically, they already did it. They already said the president can do whatever he wants as long as it's considered part of his presidential duties, which is a vague bullshit thing that means he can do anything he wants. All he has to do is say, this was under the purview of my presidential duties. I had to preserve and protect the Constitution in the way I see fit. Anyway, so Google. So the point was, Google obviously no longer the best search engine. It just hasn't gotten around to people yet. They are the king. They are the market leader. People habitually use them. Google is my default browser in Chrome. I don't even have there's not even an option to insert Perplexity as my default browser. And if it was, I don't know I'd want it. I like the list that Google gives you. I like this. I like a quick little list, although I don't like this. People also ask, it's like, I just want the right answer. And this is what I got from Perplexity right away. I got the right answer. I got the right answer. I have links. Okay, so he's already looked at all the links. He figured out what I meant, and he came up with the whole thing. He's telling me the basic breakdown of what I asked. That's what a search engine should be in 2024, whatever the hell year this is. I think Google's like 20 years old now. They haven't changed very much in 20 years. Now a new system is coming along, kicking their asses. It's a problem. But Google has gone super, super heavy into AI themselves and is working very, very hard. The problem is, though, that their model, it's not that they can't do what Perplexity does or what OpenAI does. It's not that they can't do it. It's that, how does that make them money? That's what the problem is. Google wants to make money. They want to set, they want to have you, these links, a lot of them they pay to be where they are. And not necessarily on this topic, but they rely heavily on advertising and such. So when I say, what's the best pizza in Delray Beach? Okay. So Pizza Rustica, not really the best pizza. Wooden Fire, Windy City, oh come on, Windy City. Then Reddit comes up because Reddit is like super linked, so everything goes to Reddit now. Reddit, by the way, had great earnings because, yeah, everything in Google points to Reddit now. I don't know what kind of satanic deal they have. TripAdvisor also, everything goes to TripAdvisor. I didn't ask TripAdvisor the 10 best pizza places. I asked Google the 10 best pizza places. I don't know what that means. Here's Eater Miami. What? It's like not even the same area. Open Table, the 2 best pizza places. One is Sal's. No, it isn't. Cucina Moderna. Come on, that's crazy. Windy City again. That's like, I don't know who's got. How you doing that? Sandwich Man and Pizza too. I'm talking about cardboard with cheese. I mean, come on. It's like, now let's see. Whoop. So now same question, going to Perplexity. But the point is, Google is like add, and paid responses and so on and so forth. And Perplexity is like saying, here you go, death by pizza. Yes, very popular. Windy City, I don't get the Windy City thing though. There's something wrong here. I like him. The guy is great. The place is great. He makes amazing Zeppelis, but not pizza. Delray Pizza. I don't even know what that is. What the hell is Delray Pizza? It's honestly not much better, but usually it's better. But again, one of the problems is that everything is getting gamed. Yelp, he's relying on Yelp, that's why. Where is this? On Route 1, Delray Pizza. Where on earth are you? Where is that plaza? Now I'm gonna have to go there. Delray Pizza next to a gaming store? Or essentially a computer store. So weird. I've got to find this place now. The South Federal Highway is Route 1, but obviously you can have a telephone address where something actually is. Does that look good? Doesn't really look that great. Yeah, that's their picture. I don't know. Sad. There's no good pizza in Florida. Ugh. I don't get it. All right, I'll check it out. I'll let you know next week. I'll find out. I'll do a field trip now. Anyway, so the problem is Google's advertising driven model. This is where they make all their money. They make 90% of their money on search revenue. So what happens when they don't? So even though Google could do what Perplexity does, they can't because it doesn't. That model doesn't allow for advertising the way it's set up. They're starting to see they come out with pictures now. I don't know what that's a picture of. How would you know what that is? It's a random picture of pizza. So complex. Anywho, so where were we? Oh yeah, we were going through our stuff. So Google did well. Their AI stuff is paying off. They've got a lot of cloud storages, all sorts of things bring in. 88.7 billion, 88.27 billion in revenues, making $212 per share, and the shares are 180 bucks. But the shares are 180 bucks. That's not really that great, is it? Making $212 per share when your shares are 180 bucks. So figure over the year, you're talking $8 made on 180. That's not particularly great earnings. Cloud revenue, see what's happening here though? The cloud revenue is so huge. Advertising revenue, not, well, 10.4% is pretty good. YouTube ads is huge also. Now look at AMD though. AMD was disappointing and they went down quite a bit, they went down 8%. And exactly what I've been telling you guys is gonna happen, AI chip competition. That whole space is crowding up more and more people. That's where all the money is. Everybody's investing in that space to compete in that space. Treasury yields are still popping up. That's also a bad thing. This is a very good little report, actually. I mean, there's not a lot of you know, explanation to things, but as far as the facts, I mean, it really does help you focus on what's going on in the market. And again, this goes back to the thing, the Fed is, here's when the Fed lowered rates, here's the meeting, when they lowered the rates, anticipation was they would lower rates, they've lowered rates more than anticipated, but in reality, they still got to auction off bonds. And people aren't willing to buy bonds, 10-year notes, people are not willing to buy 10-year notes for this fake ass price. And that's where the Fed loses control of the bond market. And if the Fed loses control of the bond market, it doesn't matter what they say. You know, Greece had this problem in 2008, 2009, and you don't think that Greece would have liked to have gone in and have their central bank go, you know, they don't have a central bank, the ECB, but even the ECB rates were 3% back then, or 2%, and Greece was, the things went from 3% to 4% to 10% to 20%. Because they lost control of the bond market. The bond market said, we don't care what your rate is. We don't care what your official rates are. If you want us to lend you money, you will pay us for the risk we're taking and lending to you. And you know what? It turned out 20% was way too low because they defaulted. And the people who lent the money at 20% lost their assets, because they were drastically underestimating the risk, because the basis of it was that the EU wouldn't let Greece go bankrupt and wouldn't let Greece default, but they did. And you know what else is funny? Who else said they would let, who said they would let somebody default on their bonds? Donald Trump. Donald Trump, in his first term, when he was running for election before his first term, he said, I think the US could just default on this debt. I don't think there's any reason to pay it back, because he's the king of bankruptcy. And to some extent, he's right. If we declare bankruptcy and we default on all our debts, We screw everybody who ever lent us money, but you know what? We're still the biggest economy on earth. And in fact, frankly, we'd be the biggest economy on earth that doesn't owe anyone any money anymore. And so what's going to happen 5 minutes later? Everyone's going to lend us money. Just like people go bankrupt, as soon as their bankruptcy clears, they start getting credit card things in the mail. And everybody's offering to give them credit. Why? Because you have a clean credit record. You don't owe any money. You're a good credit risk all of a sudden. So Trump is not wrong that we could declare bankruptcy, except the repercussions of us declaring bankruptcy would be insane. First of all, we would destroy Social Security, because Social Security, we owe Social Security a lot of money. We borrow trillions of dollars from Social Security and Medicare funds. So their funds are empty because we took the money and we owe it to them. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is there are many, many, many grandparents and widows and orphans and so on and so forth in this country who hold their 10%, who hold their 10-year notes and their 20-year notes and their 30-year notes and have had them forever, and it's their asset. They get a little interest every year, and that's how they live. So those people would be wiped out. That can't be your policy. Yet, Brazil has gone bankrupt, Argentina's gone bankrupt. You can do it. Italy's gone bankrupt. It can be done. Greece went bankrupt. Greece is great. Iceland went bankrupt. They're fine. Actually, Iceland didn't go bankrupt. They let their banks go bankrupt. That's what they did. They let the banking system collapse. They're like, hey, you guys are idiots. You know what? There's a whole brand new people in there who are doing just great. So yeah, we could default on our debt and not pay it, but either way, the bottom line is, what's the risk of the guy tomorrow? Because we have to borrow money every month. We borrow $600 billion every single month. Most of it, probably 400 billion of it is 400 billion is replacing other debt. It's rollover debt. But 200 billion a month is brand new debt, the deficit of the United States, brand new debt, $200 billion a month, on top of the 400 billion we're already rolling over. That's our monthly nut. And we've got to get people to give us that money every month, and that money demands interest, and that interest is 4.26% as of this morning. That's what they demand to risk lending us money for 10 years. So over the course of 10 years, we're going to pay them 42.6% interest. And they will lend us. And the way it works is actually they lend us less money. You get a face value note that's discounted, and the discount rate is the interest taken off the full price of the note. So at the end of the note, you redeem your note for the full value at the end of 10 years. That's how it works. But the problem is, if the dollar declines 10%, 20% over the course of those 10 years, you will get back dollars that are worth less than what you lent them at. And you will lose money. So that's part of your risk of lending the US money is, will the dollar devalue? And if we default, the dollar will devalue drastically. And if we default, the next round of borrowers is going to want a lot more money. So there's all sorts of things going on in the background we should be very, very concerned about. And if we elect somebody who acts rashly in this situation, we could actually collapse the entire global economy. Whatever. Yeah, what are you going to do? Yesterday's recap. Nikkei, see, so Nikkei's up, Hang Seng's down, Shanghai's down because China is still falling apart. Doesn't matter what you try to do. Europe, not so good either. Futures and commodities, actually we picked way up on the futures, right? Oh no, not really. Look, S&P down, Dow down. Oh shit, this thing hit 69. We didn't cash out. What are we doing? Where were you guys? Oh, that was earlier. That wasn't now. I'm sorry. That wasn't your fault. It was 69. I didn't cash out early. Doing other stuff. Oh, well. Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that too. So economics, the MBA applications were down a bit. ADP employment was up they thought it was supposed to be 115 and went up 233,000 jobs were added. That's now non-farm payroll is Friday. If we have that kind of addition in non-farm payroll, you got a big problem with trying to get the Fed to lower rates next week. Yeah, next week. GDP, 2.8% is solid. These are just estimates anyway for Q3. The chain deflated, went from 2.5 to 1.8. Again, if these numbers are real, then we just nailed a soft landing. I mean, that's incredible. But of course, you know, so given this incredible economic feat, we're going to remove the current administration and put in somebody else. We're going to put in somebody who did not perform quite as well economically. Petroleum inventories. Well, this was the basis of our bet yesterday. Was let's see if I can find that. Where is it? This thing needs to be rebooted. It's a little slow. Okay. So yesterday, we talked about the oil trade. I made that one too, even with the background. Very cool. Let's find it. Control F, oil. So yesterday I said congratulations to all who followed us in the futures trade. As it turned out, we had 450 runs. So what does that mean? Let's talk about this. It's important. So I made the call on Monday morning around here, and I said when we cross back over 67.50, the way to play the oil is to go long at 67.50, stop out at 67.44. So it's a 6-cent loss. A 6-cent loss is $60 in oil. It's $10 per penny in the contract. But what happened is we went up to 67.90, right? Which is $400 and something up, or $450 per contract. It worked out to. So we made so the top is $450 per contract. When it starts pulling back, you got to stop out. You can't just keep it in no matter what happens. So, you know, you ride the momentum until it stops. Then when it starts consolidating, you say, okay, I'm going to get out, or get half out at least, and then set a stop a bit lower, and that locks in most of your gains. And then when and if it comes back down, you get in again. So no. Below is what triggers your about to re-engage. It goes back. Now it crosses over 67.50. We buy back again. It goes down, but does not stop out, doesn't hit the red line. It goes back up, and we make another 450. Now that we know that 450 is where you stopped out last time, you should be on the ball for this too, right? But it's the same thing. So you stop out here again, and we cross back below. We reload. We're waiting. We get the cross back over 650. I'm sorry, it was 67.50. Same thing, goes up, goes down, no stop out trigger. We're still above that line. And then back to the same frickin' place again. So apparently 68 keeps getting rejected. And we take the 450 and run again if we're smart. But even if we're not smart, you hold on, we never get rejected, and we go up. And what I usually do is, again, usually I'm going to take one off or half off, depending on how many contracts I have. But I'll take half off. I'll see what happens with the next one, and you know, if it goes too far down, I'm still going to make half of the total amount. As long as I stop out where I'm supposed to, I'm going to make good money. But if I let it ride like this, and I wanted to keep it overnight, which is what I did say I wanted to do, as I said, if you have been cashing out one half on the pullbacks, blah blah blah. So then I said also though, for a longer term trade, you can just do this. You can just sell the US. You can just work on the USOs and use that spread instead. All right, so our goal is $71 on the 24th. That's our goal, is to get to 71 by the 24th. So I still have 2 running, and they're at $2,000. So, and this is all house money, so I don't really I'm not really too concerned about it. But honestly, like I just chided people for not taking $1,000 off the table. So why don't we get back to one, take the $1,000, and now we're clear. So now we've got a locked-in profit. And if I make my next stop 68, that's still a $500 profit on that. So I'd end up with an average profit, with a total profit of $1,750. No, I'm sorry, it'd be a total profit of $1,750 per contract. So 75% of my potential gain at 2,000 would be locked in. But now that I've got that one off, my basis is all the way down to 66. So frankly, I can just sit on this one for a long time. And I'd be more inclined to double down again at 67.50, which has been very reliable, than to get out, because I truly believe that 71 is going to get hit. So that's how you play that. Let's see if there's any questions. No questions. I am doing amazing. Amazing. All right. What else has happened? Waymo. This is a big deal that people have to really consider. Waymo's robotaxi milestone. Let's get the backstory on this one. Oh, where am I? New thread. Okay. Whoop. Just because he understands a lot of stuff doesn't mean you should just confuse him. I just read this. What is the service area for Waymo, and what percentage of rides have they gotten, and any accidents or problems? I mean, you know, you can't ask Google that. Oops. All right, let's draw something, but it's all right. So Waymo operates in San Francisco, Day City, Broadmoor, and Coloma, Los Angeles also, Santa Monica, downtown LA, Phoenix Metro, Austin, they're in more places than I thought. 100,000 rides per week as of August, doubled from 50,000 in May. So they went from 50,000 to 100,000, and now they're doing 150,000 a week. 700 vehicles, mostly in San Francisco and Phoenix. Safety record: 84% fewer deployments, 73% fewer crashes, 43% fewer police reports. So it's not, it's not no accidents, but it's better than the human drivers. 17 involved human drivers rear-ending the Waymo. 3 of 25 most serious crashes, 3 involved human drivers running a red light. So 20 of the 25 were not really their fault. 43% of all crashes impact speed less than 1 mile an hour. Recent challenges. Incidents of stationary objects, software recall. Despite these challenges, Waymo maintains strong. Okay, so they're demonstrating that they are 84% fewer airbag deployments, 73% fewer injury crashes, 48% fewer incidents. So they are much better than human drivers, and they are expanding at a very strong clip, but it's still a limited market. And my suspicion is that they're operating in areas that they have like super mapped out, right? So in other words, they've got this incredible database for the car, and it's not like you can, I guess you could do it anywhere. And if you see this many cities, you have to say they can obviously do it in multiple places. But the question is, do they have a limited area? Do they, if you get in the thing in San Francisco and you say you want to go to Oakland, will it take you to Oakland, or will it say, I'm sorry, I don't do Oakland? I didn't know. You have to know all the facts before you start thinking about how it's going to work. But see, because what they say here is Santa Monica to downtown LA is a very limited specific area. Then it says expansion to Marina Del Rey, Mar Vista, Playa Vista, Hollywood, Chinatown. So you mean I was picking up the car in Santa Monica or LA and you weren't going to take me to Hollywood or Chinatown? That doesn't make any sense. So clearly there's something not 100% about these things, right? It doesn't, because anybody's been, if you've been out in LA, you know that like, what's the place called? Santa Monica. So Santa Monica is up on the cliff by the beach, and then you just drive from Santa Monica. The next thing you hit is like Hollywood and Chinatown. That's where you go when you drive down the street. So you're telling me that you can only drive inside the little town of Santa Monica? So that indicates to me that they have like super duper mapped out areas that the taxis operate in. And so they know every square inch of the area they're operating in, but they can't just go driving around willy-nilly. And that means it's a very big, expensive, and who knows if they're even making money program to get 700 cars to be able to drive around somewhere. You have to see, you got to think of all that, because just because they tell you, oh, we can do this now, or oh, we had this test, that doesn't mean it's a real life situation. It's like those Tesla robots, they're total bullshit. Oh, and by the way, Tesla is like one of the most tempting shorts I've ever seen. Oh my God. If Trump doesn't get elected, I say short the crap out of these guys, because he is hiding behind Trump right now. He's just that they are in big trouble. Boy, look, if it isn't for the tariffs, Tesla's going to be screwed. They got lapped by Waymo selling twice as many cars, not Waymo, by Boyd selling twice as many cars as they do. This bullshit that you're going to use Tesla for your robo taxi service when Waymo's already doing it now and is going to expand rapidly and is backed by Google, who has just as much money as Elon Musk does. These numbers, 80 times earnings, and notice it's dropping. This year, they're at 71 times earnings, 72 times earnings. Next year, they'll be at 79 times earnings. Their forward PE is declining. I mean, their forward PE is expanding. Their forward earnings are declining. This is nuts. You're betting, people are betting on a future that's not there. Not only that, though, but Elon Musk is raising money for SpaceX, and Elon Musk is raising money for some. Now he's got an AI robot company that's not Tesla. How do Tesla shareholders put up with this shit? It's like, dude, you're not making money at this company. Could you please concentrate on one thing for a minute? No, I'm going to run a presidential campaign. I'm going to be the secretary of cutting government costs, and I'm going to start a whole AI company that I just raised a ton of money for. That's a short. That's a short on the car company he's abandoning because it's not really working out. So that's crazy. All right, what else? What else are we talking about? That's Waymo. OpenAI strategic partnership. Oh, here you go. OpenAI, Taiwan Semiconductor, Broadcom. They're getting away from NVIDIA and they're getting away from Microsoft. Oh, here it is. Just talked about that. They're raising money at a $40 billion valuation for XAI. Now, first of all, what kind of idiot is giving Elon Musk money to XAI when it's like, dude, you have 12 companies. Why? How is my startup going to work out? And also the companies you have, you just basically rape them and take the money and talent and people out of the company and start another company and raise more money. That's why he's the richest guy on earth. He just keeps starting up companies and people keep giving him money and he gets these incredible valuations. And none of them are particularly performing that well. Okay, Novo Nordisk, with Ozempic and everything like that, they're getting warned by the FDA. The weight loss drugs, Lilly just reported that they're not selling as many weight loss drugs as they thought. And again, another chance to warn you guys that just because you heard of something and just because everybody's doing it, just because you hear that the weight loss thing is so great and this and that, not last year, like months ago, we were talking about whether or not we should be shorting the snack food industry because so many people are taking weight loss drugs. that people are no longer going to be eating snack food. And yeah, they sold a ton of it, but you can't, these for a trend like that to really take hold and develop. The same thing with the robo-taxis, right? There's only 700 in the country. You can't write off Hertz because there's 700 robo-taxis. You can extrapolate things out and say, yeah, over time this will happen, and over time that'll happen. Maybe with more and more weight loss drugs, or the concept of weight loss drugs, whatever it is that they do in the end, that they will turn off the genes that cause people to overeat, or they'll make it so, or what if they turn on the genes that make you burn fat and people can eat whatever the hell they want, like when we were teenagers. You can eat whatever you want and never get fat. Then what happens to the snack industry? So, or maybe they'll come up with some snacks that burn off calories. Who knows? I mean, it's, crazy stuff can happen. So you can't be sure about what's going to happen or what the effect of something is, even when even when you're constantly being told it's a trend, it's this, it's that. So like we were talking before, we were told all year long that the electric vehicle craze is fading out and people don't really want EVs and it's never going to happen, and let's all go back to ICE engines and start playing the silly little game about that we're going to do this electric vehicle thing because nobody wants it, nobody cares, blah, blah, blah. Turned out to be total bullshit. They were lying to us the whole time. Everybody, you got to go back, find all those articles that you read, circle the name of the authors, and never read anything they write again. Just get them somehow, fortunately AI is going to enable us to do this. You'll be able to say, I don't trust this author. That's going to happen, that will happen in the future. In the very near future, you will be able to tell your AI, this guy's an asshole, don't show me his articles, this guy's a moron. The Washington Post is run by a corporation and tries to feed me bullshit, let's not read that anymore. I'm not a fan of not reading stuff. I like to read everything from every side, but when I find out somebody is a corporate shill and just basically just says any bullshit that somebody tells him to say, and it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, or there's facts or not, I gotta at some point put my foot down. I always look at the author of an article before I read the article. When I see certain people's names, I'm not gonna start, whatever. But when I see certain people's names, as soon as I start with, before I even start reading the article, I'm like, oh, so here, let's see what his load of bullshit is. And I'm not talking politically, I'm talking about fact-checking wise, knowing their ass and their elbow wise. What is this guy doing reporting on it's like that, I will say Adam, whatever. This Adam guy who's I don't know, he used to be a farmer reporter for the street, and now he's like the expert on electric vehicles, and he's not. He's just following he just follows the payoff money. It's really horrifying. Whoever pays to get these articles done. Remember Tobin Smith, right? Tobin Smith had a whole huge scandal. That's why he's no longer around. Tobin Smith had a whole huge scandal because he was getting paid to write articles about companies. They leave guys on Fox all the time. He had a whole show on Sunday where he was like one of the main guys. And he would write articles for that. He'd write articles for, I think, The Street also, and whatever, in different places. And it turned out that it was for sale. And he's not the only one. It's endemic around it's in the industry. I mean, he got caught directly, but it's endemic. I've been offered money to write things for companies. I've been offered to give good reviews to people and whatever. If you do that, you're dead. Your reputation is dead. If anyone finds out, but of course, if no one finds out, you got a hell of a career. So that's these guys. So the weight loss drugs are not what we think. JP Morgan. So what viral check fraud means is apparently on TikTok, the way JP Morgan's online check thing works, they automate the checking, and you don't have an actual checkbook, you just write things electronically. So apparently it was really easy to fake it and scam people and put out fake checks and create fake accounts and so on and so forth with JP Morgan. So people were ripping people off all over the place with these fake JP Morgan checks. You know, Chase, probably Chase. And the weird thing is that a person figures out how to commit a really good crime, like that the movie with was it DiCaprio? Or was it the good-looking guy, Brad Pitt? Anyway, it's either DiCaprio or Brad Pitt paid to check a fraudster. And Catch Me If You Can was a movie. I can't remember which one of them it was. Some good-looking blonde guy. And nope, I can't figure out which one it was. Anyway, so instead in the old days, one guy used to do that, and they catch him, and that's that. Now, and this is so weird though, you figure out a good scam. And instead of just doing your good scam and making money and going away, these guys go on TikTok the minute, like 5 minutes after they invent the scam, and say, "Look at this scam I came up with." Like, what is wrong with you? How can people? But I know what it is though. It's because these kids grow up with a phone in their hand. You know, they're taking selfies from the minute that they can learn what a selfie is. They're like sitting there taking selfies of themselves. They broadcast every minute of their lives. And it doesn't occur to them that when they're committing a crime would not be a good time. It doesn't occur to them not to broadcast themselves in the bathroom. So apparently it goes for crimes too. If they're committing a crime, they're just like, "Hey, here I am committing a crime. Watch how I do it." It's crazy. All right, so we were going to talk about two important things. Well, Lily, we talked about the weight loss stuff. AMD, oh, we talked about that too. Okay, good. All right, so AMD is getting caught up by the competition. Now, is that good or bad for Intel? Well, Intel's one of the competitors that's given AMD a hard time. So, you know, people were writing off Intel and saying AMD is going to be the future, blah, 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 blah. But here's AMD giving their actual report, and it's like, ooh, 16% down. Ooh, what's ahead for Intel in Q3? Inline earnings with serious data center challenges. Well, yeah, they're still transitioning. AMD's worst round Q1 after AI growth disappoints, blah, blah, blah. So you say, how can AI growth disappoint? It's because AMD's chips aren't that great. People would rather wait for NVIDIA's chips than buy the AMD chips. Just because you say you have an AI chip doesn't mean it works. Doesn't mean it performs well enough to use it. And Intel's here. So here's the thing. If you create a data center and you have X amount of box space, right? You've got racks and you have 100,000 CPUs that have racks. Now, when you need a GPU to go in it to run the AI, you've only got one slot per machine to do that. If the AMD racks are 20% less efficient than the NVIDIA racks, you have to say to yourself, well, is it easier for me to add 20% more actual boxes to my data center? And that requires maybe a whole nother wing of your data center and so on and so forth. So should I do that, or should I wait for the NVIDIAs to come in because they're going to give me much better performance and I want her to get more space and so on and so forth. So it's not a small decision to say, oh, it's only 20% difference in efficiency. There's a lot of other considerations: the cooling cost, the electric cost, personnel cost, warehousing space. All that stuff comes into play just because of a little processor efficiency. And so the question for Intel is your stuff going to be good enough? That's what matters. And again, year after year after year, decade after decade after decade, Intel has beaten AMD and everybody else in the market. And all of a sudden, people are treating them like they don't know what they're doing, which is really weird. The mistake Intel made is they did not move towards AI chips. They chose at a very critical juncture a couple of years ago to build new plants to make 20 angstrom and lower size chips. An angstrom is, I believe it's the orbit of an atom, like the radius of an atom. Not an atom, but an angstrom is like the radius of an atom with its electrons, something like that. Anyway, very tiny. So 20 is their first batches, and they're down to like 7 now. They're down to like 7 angstroms, which is, you know, insane. But that means you can pack. If it's a 7 angstrom chip, it means you can pack 3 times more transistors on the chip than you could on a 20 angstrom chip, right? Because it's 1/3 the size, basically. That's efficiency, that's power, that's less consumption per whatever's. That's lower, that's a more density that allows for faster transmission inside the chip. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So Intel went that way, but they went that way aiming to make PCs more powerful. Their logic was that the AIs would have to still run on PCs and blah, blah, blah. That turns out really not to be the case because the AI got implemented on a cloud, although it's kind of moving back towards PCs and phones now. So Intel went down, maybe it was the right path, but it was the wrong path for the last 3 years. It's been the wrong path. 3 years. Okay. They went the wrong way. Here's where they announced they were pivoting to AI, but it turned out that their pivoting to AI is going to take a long time and cost a massive amount of money. So, yay, we're pivoting to AI. Oh my God, how the hell are we going to afford this? How are we going to go bankrupt before we get to that point? The answer is no, we won't survive. It will go up. It will become powerful again, whatever, but nobody believes me, so I'm not going to pay. I'm not going to pay the horse on it. All right, but they should start turning it around next year, and it will be apparent sometime late next year that they know what they're doing. So I still like Intel, but again, I'm not going to. I refuse to keep talking about Intel because people buy it and they get disappointed. I do really like them down here. They all, in fact, last year I said they would have been the stock of the year last year in November, which is here. I'm good thing I didn't. I was going to make them my stock of the year last year, but I said they need at least another year. Now, are they ready yet? Is this the bottomy bottom? Maybe. They might be my stock of the year, but then the question is, will they turn around by 2028? No, not even 2028, 2027. Will they actually turn around by 2027? And that's still iffy. You gotta be super patient with this. But it's like Boeing. It's like to recreate what they have would be so ridiculous. It would take so much effort and so much capital, and so many people have to be trained. But like Boeing has 174,000 people. But it's not just the Boeing people, it's the entire supply chain that's built around Boeing, where all these companies are designed to feed Boeing. They're designed to do Boeing specs and put their product in Boeing planes and so on and so forth. You can't just replace that. You can't just say, oh, Emirates is going to take it over. How are they going to take it over? It takes years and years and years to develop a supply chain around the Emirates type planes, which by the way are all small nothing planes. They're not even really competition, but it's the only one you can even point to and say maybe they could catch up in market share. Nobody's going to do that, and the Airbus can't double in size. And the Airbus is, again, it's the wrong kind of plane. It's not the same stuff. You can't just tell the parts suppliers to start making the Airbus parts. That in itself will take years for them to roll it over. And then the supply chain network's totally different. Everything is designed to ship to Boeing. It's not designed to ship overseas to Airbus. That's a whole nother mess that has to get worked out. So that's true there, and the same thing is true with Intel. These are incredibly specific, incredibly difficult to make parts that require years of working together with your suppliers to make sure that the specs are right, the matches are right, the coding is right, and everything is going to get assembled correctly. And there's no margin for error. When you're working with things the size of an atom, you don't have space to make a mistake. So when you hear people say, oh, well, they're losing their thing, they're out of here, they're gone, it's like, and replaced with what? A messed up, beaten up Boeing and a messed up, beaten up Intel is still got a better chance of being the market leader in 3 years than any other company out there. They've got everything they need to become a great company again. They just need the right person to come in there and turn things back around. And that's why they have people who are called turnaround specialists. That's why you hear Fortune 500 type companies come back again and again. Think of the automakers. Think how many times they were down and out and they came back. You know, being embedded and being in the right place and having the market share and having the knowledge and the know-how and the people and so on and so forth and the ecosystem, it's not nothing. And you got to respect that. And that's, you know, a big part of earnings is for us to identify these companies that sell off like this and say, hey, you know, like Procter & Gamble or something like that. It's like, no, there's still Procter & Gamble. You know, they're not going to go away. Or Pfizer, that's another one recently coming back, right? Which is one of my table bangers. Oh, yeah, nice spelling of Pfizer. Oh, I know what I wanted to look at. It was Phillips 66. We're going to look at those guys. So here's Pfizer. Fell out that triangle squeezy thing, right? Here's a triangle squeezy thing. They're failing it. They're going to have to get back pretty quickly. Look at that, good earnings. Look at these earnings. Maybe. Can I click on that? Yeah, there you go. Look at that. How much is a surprise? 72% better than expected. The GAAP earnings were not worse. They were 180% on GAAP. Revenues, 18% more revenues than expected. They kicked ass. Their guidance is still conservative, but they kicked ass. It's ridiculous not to own this stock. Now, where's Phillips 66? PSX. Oh my God, I can't believe I knew that. Look at Phillips 66. Their GAAP earnings were bad. Their regular EPS was good. If you do a GAAP, it's not as good because of the way they did their accounting. The revenue's right about online, and you're talking about a PE of it was 10. It's getting worse. It's 11, but 11 is still pretty good. So this is one we should be definitely taking a good look at going forward. All right, and you look at this stuff. Here's the EPS: 2020, 2021, 2022, very nice. 23, not as nice. 24, even not as nice, but still it's going to be 11 times earnings. Look at the sales. The sales are decent. They're buying back shares. They're reducing their share count. So when the earnings, I was going to do this morning, but they didn't have their earnings call, or it wasn't transcripted anyway. But we'll take a closer look at this because this is definitely worth taking a look at. We don't have energy stocks like this. It'd be nice to have an energy stock that we can play with. We'll put it in the butterfly portfolio maybe, because on the whole, if you look at them long term, they're pretty reliable. You know, this is their main channel goes across here, and they can go up and they can go down. But I think realistically, you know, we can start picking them up over here and sell short calls for the butterfly portfolio and probably do very, very well. And we don't really care if they go down. So I would probably look at 100, 120 bull call spread, sell some $100 puts because we can always roll them lower, and then we'll sell across for income, something like that. I really like that idea for these guys. Andrew says, FYI, since 1980, a 2.5% tax on cars and a 25% tax on trucks was applied to vehicles from Japan. And this is still in effect. Really? No, I did not know that. So talking about tariffs from before, he's saying there is still a 2.5% tax on cars from Japan, but a 25% tax on light trucks. Does that include the Tundra, which is like the most, isn't that the most popular car, the Toyota Tundra, or is it the Ford F-150? But there you go. That's the whole thing. The Ford F-150 is probably only popular because there's a 25% surcharge on the competition. Protectionism since 1980, and we're friends with Japan. That's a little kooky. What time is it? 2:30. Okay. So let's see what else is going on. Here's our man JP Morgan, very angry. What else have we done that's of consequence? Oh, SMCI, holy shit. They were bad people. They're down 31% now. Ernst & Young resigned, but didn't just resign as their auditors, or Ernst & Young resigned and wrote a letter to the public basically saying, do not believe anything that you read in their books. So say bye-bye to these guys. And Hindenburg had warned about these guys last month or something like that. And here it is. And again, this is a useful thing about this system. What's the story with SMCI? Supermicro, turbulence, stock trading down 31%. The company has shown extremely remarkable growth, blah, 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 financial challenges, DOJ. Okay, the Department of Justice launched an investigation. Investigation is in the early stages. News caused a 12.1% stock drop when it happened. Delayed filing of annual report. Company needs additional time. 23% drop when it was announced at that time, which was when? August 28th. Short seller report. Okay, the Hindenburg report was published. I wish you would tell me these things in advance. I don't have to do this. Hindenburg report was September 27th. And Hindenburg said accounting irregularities, sanctions, and report control failures, undisclosed related party transactions. So a lot of bullshit going on in their books. And Supermicro is another one of those chasey stocks, SMCI. So what had been going on? Look at the rise and fall. But this is why I always say, you know, when you're looking at stocks like this, they were at $120. And now they're back at 33. And they're gonna be probably 20 or less. So, but they're probably gonna go back to like 10. They'll be only back to a year at the start. You know, this is why you can't just buy a stock because it's in the space, because it's an AI thing and they're going to benefit from the chippy thing and this and that. You still have to know the company, and it has to be a real company built on real numbers with actual, you know, actual financials that make sense. And that's what Hindenburg was saying in September. In September, by the way, they're not early. But after Supermicro dropped like that, what Hindenburg was doing was they were looking at the company saying, I wonder if this company is a bargain down here. But then they looked at the book and said, holy shit, this company is terrible. This company is a complete mess and should be it's like to the point where they should be investigated. That's what the Hindenburg report said in late September. So Hindenburg wasn't trying to get them when they were up here. Hindenburg was down here looking for a bargain and said, oh no, that's not a bargain, that's a disaster. And now Ernst & Young comes in and says, oh, it's worse than you thought. They hang on a second, you guys are sugarcoating it by calling it a disaster. So this will be interesting to see how it plays out. And now look at all these others. So I guess around that time, look what happened. Look at these price targets. Downgrade to 930, downgrade to 1,000, downgrade to 900, 600. Here's initiated, neutral, 450. Here's Needham, buy at 600. Well, I think they split. They must have split. That's insane. Yeah, these numbers, see, that's a problem. If they don't adjust them when they split, I don't know when the split was. Maybe daily will show me that. Yeah, there you go. 10 to 1. So they split 10 to 1. So they were at 500 when these guys were saying this stuff. So at 500, people had them pegged for double. But that's the bullshit of the markets. That's the bullshit of these analysts. Okay, you gotta go look at these reports and say, here's a guy I should never follow. Here's a guy who doesn't know what he's doing. From what Hindenburg says, not one of these people could have possibly read their report. They could not have possibly run the numbers. This is it's essentially blatant fraud going on in their books. So how do all these analysts miss that? And especially in the age of AI, I got to tell you, because my guys would be red flagging that thing all over the place. So what is your excuse? And who are these people? Nomura, Bank of America, Barclays, JP Morgan. These are the people deciding where to put your money. There's no blowback on these people. And look at Nomura. They looked at it here, it said 900, plus and how does it hurt them? Nomura downgrade 900. No, oh, I'm sorry, it's Mizo. I thought it was Nomura again. I get my Japanese banks mixed up. Oh, all right, here's JP Morgan. JP Morgan says 1150. And then JP Morgan comes back again and says, oh, you know what, 950 to 500. They went down to 500. They went 1150, then they said, now you know what, how much later is this? This is March, this is September, 6 months. So in March, they told you it was gonna go to 1150, and then in September, they tell you it's gonna go to 500. So let's say, well, here's March, February, March, here's March, and they're telling you 1150 when it was 550, basically, or 600 bucks. And they're telling you it's going to 1150, and then in November they have no problem at all telling you it's going to go to 500 when it was effectively 250. It was still low. Their target was 500 when it's 250. That is some pretty awful advice. That's miles off from the biggest investment house on the planet. So it's crazy. But you know, that's why, I mean, look, I'm realistic about it. I stay away from this stuff for the most part because I don't want to chase the new hotness and try to get people into these momentum stocks and say, oh, look, they went to this to that, so they're going to go to this to that. No, I want to buy IBM. IBM is not going to suddenly have a gigantic accounting scandal, or probably not. Is IBM going to be as exciting? Well, it's actually kind of interesting. IBM took a big hit here. Even though they had good earnings, they've taken a big hit because their guidance was not that good. The EPS was not that good either. Wait, what? How is that green? Oh, I see. So it's the gap. You know, when you take the gap, the gap is not pretty, and the revenues are barely off. That doesn't count. The gap earnings are not pretty. Still, IBM. All they did is go too far up. There was no way they could justify these earnings, and now they're back down here. And we know that from our long-term portfolio. I don't have the. Oh, let's see if we can find the review. Let's see what I said about IBM. La da 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 da. Phil's post. It was not that long ago, but it was longer than that. Da, 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 da. There we go. So what did I say about IBM? IBM was, I did not do the chart. I did do the chart, great. So IBM was here at 223, and I said, let's cash in the 160 calls. So what was our position? This is a good example of why we do things and exactly why it works out. So we had 60 2026 160 calls with IBM at 230. They're $75. So we made $296,000 on these calls. It's one of our biggest positions. So I thought that was a bit toppy. And I said, let's cash these out. These guys are in the money. The 200s are in the money. These 200s are in the money. But these I wanted to cash out because I don't want to lose that. These, when IBM goes down, I'm going to do well when these go down. But this one, I don't want to lose that $75, and I've got almost 100%. I've got almost no premium. So if IBM drops $20, I'm going to lose $20. So I'm going to sell these. And what did we do? So we cashed in the 160 calls, and I'm going to say earnings won't justify a 50% bump. So let's do the following. This is very simple logic, right? Earnings from last earnings. When I say a 50% bump, I mean from the last earnings. So last earnings, they were at 185, and now they're 233, and 185 plus whatever is 233, 185 plus 50 something. It wasn't a 50% bump, but whatever it is. So I said earnings won't justify 50% bump. So we cashed in this, and I bought 100 of a 210, 270 spread, much higher spread. We sold the 160s down here. We picked up a 210, 270 spread. But the trick of the 210, 270 spread is it has a much tighter delta. So in other words, I guess it was 2027. So first of all, it's got more time, and it's 210, which has a 55 delta, and the 270s, which has a 28 delta. So the total difference is 27. So it's a 0.27 delta, as opposed to the 160s, which have an 80 delta. So I've cut the delta by 1/3. So in other words, now a dip in IBM is going to affect me 2/3 less than it would have if I just kept the 160. So I'm going to lose 2/3 less money on the way down for IBM. That's the logic of doing that. So we picked up the spreads, and those spreads are only $250,000, so it's also half as much money. So half as much money, losing 2/3 less, is now 4/3. I mean, sorry, it's now 4/3. Yes, it's going to, well, whatever it works out to. I can't do that math. But in other words, it's half as much money, and now it's only losing 2/3 of what it, well, 1/3 of what it would have lost. So if my potential loss was $100,000, now my potential loss is $30,000. That's ingenious. That's how you protect it. I still have a huge upside. If IBM is going to keep going up from 230, I still have a gigantic upside, but I've taken half the cash off the table. Then I said, roll all 60 short calls to 100 short April 130s. That means these were 236,000 of short calls. I rolled them to 190,000 of calls expiring in April at 230. So what's going to happen now? IBM dropped off the 230. They're all going to expire worthless, and we're going to make a freaking fortune. That's the official term for this. We are going to make this entire $190,000 is going to evaporate. This $236,000 would not have evaporated until 2026. Now I'm going to pick up $190,000 by April on these short calls. So we took 250 off the table, plus 190 is 440. 440 is all the money we could have possibly made if we'd been in a perfect situation. And also we sold some puts, which we're going to regret. We sold 30 of the puts to balance, and now we're going to have to roll those. But we sold the 2027 230 puts, and I still think that's a fine target for IBM 2 years from now. So they will hurt us on paper, but they won't really be a big problem. We'll be able to roll them down or whatever, roll them out in years. But the bottom line is this is, we took 250,000 bucks off the table. We're going to, in April, cash out, we were going to win another 190. Then we get to sell another 100,000 or so worth of calls on top of that. And we've got all the way until 2027 to keep selling. So that's a fantastic adjustment. And I am proven right, because exactly what I thought would happen is they could not justify this kind of run. Oh, that's what I meant by a 50% run. I'm sorry, I was looking at this chart. So 160 to 230 is 70. That's more like it. So there's a 50% run I meant. So they made a 50% run from the bottom of the year up to 230. I said there's no way earnings are going to justify that. And so when earnings did come out, IBM fell off a cliff, down 15% plus. And there's nothing, it's not magic or anything like that. It's just simple logic. It's saying, oh my gosh, why are they up 50%? Can they possibly have made 50% more money? Oh, they cannot possibly have made 50% more money. Is a 30 times PE justified? And you guys know how I feel about 30 times P. Not only that, but they're at the top of the freaking rising channel. Even if you take the rising channel, they're still at the top of the rising channel. They're bound to pull back. So I wanted to push forward the short calls so that they would expire sooner, because my expectation is they'll be down before April and then they'll come back at some point. So why do I want to keep my short calls at 2026? When I can push them up to April and let them expire before it has a chance to recover? And then I get to sell more short calls, make more money. So the long-term portfolio is not passive, but it's only once in a while we make an adjustment. When do we make an adjustment? When it's obvious. And this was obvious. IBM was up much too much. It was up from 160 earlier in the year, and it went up to there. They had earnings. See, these were good earnings. They had good earnings. They had other good earnings right here, also good earnings. None of them caused the stock to go up to 180. Technically, these did. I mean, to 230. Now, technically, these earnings got them to 230 slowly but surely. But would they once again justify it? Were they really doing that well? No, the PE of the stock went from 20 to 30. The earnings didn't increase, the PE increased from 20 to 30, and that's too much for IBM. Therefore, statistically, the good bet, the logical good bet, was to readjust the spread, take off our good money, which was our 160 calls, take that money off the table because we got overpaid. See, part of being a value investor, it's not just about knowing when something is too cheap. It's also knowing when it's too expensive. No matter how much you love a stock, and IBM was our trade of the year a few years ago, no matter how much you love a stock, it doesn't mean it can't be too much money. You can love a Range Rover and it's a $170,000 car. And if it's $130,000, you buy it. But if somebody offers you $230,000 for it, you sell it. You don't say, I love my Range Rover, I don't want to sell it, it's a joy to drive. It's like, yeah, sure, we know that. But you know what? You're being offered $70,000 more than you paid for it, and that's ridiculous. If the circumstances change, if the Range Rover plant burnt down and there's not going to be any more Range Rovers for 5 years, maybe you have a reason not to sell it. But if there's more Range Rovers coming and there's 100 other cars you could buy for the same money and somebody's offering you a $70,000 profit, take it. Logic. Value investing is knowing what the real value of a stock is that you're buying, is understanding what it's really worth. And sometimes the price will be too high, and sometimes the price will be too low. and you shouldn't ignore either one. That's really the second part of this equation, is you have to be able to recognize when a stock, even a stock you love, is too expensive. And that's what these portfolio reviews are really good for. It's just, you got to start saying it's not random crap. Like Dow, I said Dow's on track. IBM, this is not on track. It's over our targets. Therefore, we want to adjust. To see if anybody else came up like that. We didn't make a lot of adjustments. That was one of the only adjustments we made. Here's SoFi. Let's take our $5 calls off the table and replace it. So we took our $155 calls off the table. And again, why? Because we had this big run and we were getting good money for them. And replace it with more, but what I replaced it with, 250. We took 150 off the table, we replaced it with 250 $10 calls. We sold 200 partial cover of the $15 call. So it was the same kind of thing. We had a great run and we took the huge profit off the table. We replaced it with this one that was net $46,000. So we took 85,000 off the table. We replaced it with 46, so we cashed out half of it. And it says right here, taking net 39,000 off the table, and we still have $125,000 spread. So if it's going to keep going up, we're going to still make a shit ton of money. But if it doesn't keep going up, now I've got a proper cover, and the same deal as IBM, right? So now we've got a proper cover, and we can hold it for a couple of years and sell calls against it, and so on and so forth. It's basically the same concept. It's take money off the table when you have a chance. And, oh, wait, long-term portfolio, butterfly. Was that the butterfly? Oh, it was, I'm sorry, that was the butterfly portfolio. It wasn't even, that wasn't even the long-term portfolio. Do I have 2 IBMs? No. So we only have it in the butterfly portfolio. It's not the long-term portfolio. This must be the long-term portfolio. Yes. So here's the long-term portfolio. Future Fuel, take it and run. Not gonna, not time to go over every single one. Here's ADP. And again, they probably, I don't think they had earnings yet. Oh, they should have had earnings. Let's see. Let's make this a short by cash. Let's make this a short. See what happened? It went up so much. I said, let's make this a short by cashing out our long calls. And we covered our short calls with this spread. It's much tighter. Same concept, right? Again, it's the same freaking concept. And what happened to ADP? Well, not much of it did. So they fell off, and now they jump back up. It's not going to hurt us, but it's not as bad as we thought it would be. They're right back to 291. They dipped below, but then they recovered quickly. So, and what does that leave us with? It leaves us with, we have 40 short calls, but we have 60 longs, and we'll have to roll the short calls along. Here's Alibaba. In the money, blah, blah, blah. We may as well wait. While we wait, it would be a shame not to sell 10 January 100 calls. And if we go check on Baba, BABA. Oh, they're still drifting along, waiting for earnings. That's why. Oh, not that one. BBY is a small adjustment. CVS. Nope, this is good for a new trade, but we didn't do anything with it. Here's Gilead. The Gilead survived. A lot of farmers got hit. I think they report tonight, maybe. No, they're still up there. Yeah, no earnings yet. Did not make as many adjustments as I thought we were going to make. Jack in the Box. That's fun. Okay, we just did that one. Here's JP Morgan. JP Morgan is the invincible man. Doesn't matter what they, doesn't even matter if they lost. If JP Morgan goes down, just buy more. It's one of the simplest stocks to trade. But yes, Moderna. Oh, okay. So my theory on Moderna, because Pfizer just had great earnings. Pfizer had great earnings, but the earnings were concentrated in COVID, and therefore people are worried that it's just a blip with the COVID stuff. Meanwhile, Moderna is their partner in COVID. So if Pfizer just had great earnings due to COVID, then wouldn't that mean Moderna should probably have good earnings coming up? That's my logic for that. And they're still laying around down there, but I think that they are due for a push. Nike, whatever happened with Nike, we did that. Prudential, kicking ass. All these insurance companies doing better than we thought. Qualcomm did something there. RH, did they have earnings yet? No, look at that gap up on RH. Holy cow. They're also popping a little higher than we think they probably should be. And we made adjustments there. Here's SoFi again, love them. Stellantis, hopefully coming back. Oh, we doubled down on them. Look at that. WBA, who knows what's going to happen to them. And Yeti, who cares? Okay, great. All right, so there's that. Oh, one more thing before you go. Let's take a serious look at one of them. We go back to the main page. Actually, I don't have to go back to the main page. Go to top trades, because we just did a top trade yesterday. Means you can still play ball. DH Horton. Oh, I love this. This is the other good thing. Value investing once again. Yesterday, DH Horton had disappointing numbers. So we looked at them, we did an analysis of them, and we decided we liked what they saw. We said this was way too much. It bounced back by the end of the day anyway, but it was down around 160 when we were looking at it. And we said, this is way too much. Let's take advantage and let's jump on this trade. So we did. We sold some. The position we picked up on was in the short-term portfolio. We sold 10 DHI, 145 puts. Okay, so 145 is here. We've seen great support at that level. DHI is a builder, by the way, in case you don't know. Oh, look at them recovering, nice. Okay, so they're trading at 10 times earnings, 10 times forward earnings. Not now is 10 times. It was below 10 yesterday. So despite their disappointing earnings and disappointing guidance, the disappointing guidance still put them below 10 times earnings next year. Still a 10% increase over this year. That was their disappointment. So we sold the 145 puts, which we feel is great support. It works out to roughly 9 times earnings, or maybe like 8.5 times earnings. And, whoop, where the hell am I? Oh. So we sold the 145 puts, which are 10% below where it was, or more than 10% below where it was, and we sold them for 12 bucks. So the net, if we get assigned, is 145 minus 12 is 133. So we're saying that we think DHI should hold 133. That's right down here, the very bottom of this July dip. They missed over here and never came close to 133. They beat over here. They fell down to 133 for whatever reason down here. I think just the whole market was dipping. And then they had these earnings and they popped up. And now they're having these earnings. And although they got the poor initial reaction, they're coming right back to these highs. So I feel very, very good about this. I wanted to buy a builder. I think that now rates aren't coming down fast as people want, but they are coming on. They're certainly not going up. Unless something really comes back hard, the rates are probably not going to go up. We're going to keep down around these levels, and that means slowly but surely housing will come back. We still are 5 million homes short in this country from COVID and everything else. We have 5 million less homes than we need. That's why housing is so expensive. And more homes are going to get built, and people like DHI are going to benefit. They're going to go through a very positive cycle. So I wanted to be in the building space. And when this one dropped from the 190s to 160 yesterday, which is 30 bucks, almost 20% total drop, I was like, okay, then we're buying that one. That's what made my decision for me. I said, okay, because I like DHI. I know DHI. I like DHI. And I didn't think they'd ever get back to a level where we'd want to buy it again. So what's our play? So in the short-term portfolio, we're just doing it for the money. In the long-term portfolio, we're being much more aggressive, selling the 160 puts to 23. So we're making double. And why is that? Because in the long-term portfolio, we can afford to take a stand. In the short-term portfolio, I don't really want to own 1,000 shares of DHI. I would like not to. But in the long-term portfolio, I'm fine with owning 1,000 shares of DHI. We got $2.5 million in the long-term portfolio. And by the way, if we did get a sign in the short-term portfolio, we'd only roll it to the long-term portfolio anyway. But in the long-term portfolio, I have no problem at all owning them. We don't mind owning them for $160,000. And by the way, and if it was going to be a sign, we would roll it and we would offset it and we would lower our cost basis and we'd sell calls against it. So we'd find ways to lower that price anyway. And meanwhile, we're taking the 140, 180 spread. And once again, oh, not there. The 140, 180 spread. So we went all the way down for our long position to 140 and sold the 180 calls to cover it. So if it gets back to 180, we make our full money. And how much is that full money? It's net $40,000 that we're spending on a $100,000 spread. But notice we only sold 20 out of 25 longs. So we set ourselves up to sell more short-term calls, but we're waiting for a bounce to do that. And that's exactly what I wrote. That's $62,500. So we're spending $40,000 bucks on a $100,000 spread with $62,000 in the money. It's 50% profit in the money when we start. It can go to 100,000. We're going to make that total. And when DHI bounces back, we can sell 5 to 10 calls per quarter. Like the Jan 170s, 820, and I said not yet. And you know why I said not yet? Because if you go to DHI and you look at the Jan 170s, they are now 11 bucks. One day later, they're 11 bucks. They were what did I say they were? 820. So they were 820 yesterday, they were 11 today. That play, frankly, I mean, we could have just made that a trade. And everybody be really happy that it went from 8 bucks to 11 bucks in a day. But selling 10 of those at 8 bucks would have been 8,200 bucks. Now they're 11 bucks. So now we can sell them for $11,000. But we're still not ready because we still think it's a little low. Why? Value investing. We know what it's worth. We know what we want to sell it for. We know what a good price is and a bad price is. This is now an okay price, but it's not a great price. Let's wait for a great price. So we're going to sell, I'm only calculating at the 8, it's really 11 already, but we sell 8,200 times 8 is another $65,000 worth of income potential selling short calls. We are 5 undercovered, so we can sell 5 with absolutely 0 risk at all, but we can sell 10 with a very, very teeny tiny risk. We're almost certainly not going to get overwhelmed on the trade. Therefore, easily $65,000 more dollars can be pulled up against this $40,000 spread, in addition to the $60,000 profit we make at 180. So all told, we can make $120,000 or more on a $40,000 spread. That's 300% total playing this spread over time. And that's what makes it a top trade. And the top trade, by the way, it's not about the money, although the money is important, but it's not top trade. The idea of a top trade is that it's going to give us a good return, a solid, very nice return, higher than average, with a much higher than average chance of success. Our top trades average 70 to 80% successful over time. So when we do a top trade, it's because we found a stock and we found a trade that has an extremely high chance of being right. I don't care if the money is secondary. If you're right all the time, right? If you're right 7 out of 10 times, you are very, very likely to make a good amount of money. Nothing else really matters, but other than being right most of the time. Plus, we have all these trades that allow you to make up to 300%, more than 300% depending. That's what makes them fantastic. So that's why Top Trades is our most popular product. I mean, I said we have the most subscribers to Top Trades. They don't participate in the chat, but there's so many Top Trade members. And of course, obviously, all the premium members and basic members get Top Trades anyway. We don't do them that often, you know, and the reason is because I care about winning. So the 29th we did Horton. Earlier we did FLR. Well, how's FLR do? FLR. Oh, look at that. So early October, we did FLR, and they're picking up nicely. I'm not going to go over everyone, it's silly. September 30th, we did Stellantis, the auto company. They're still down in the dumps, good still to pick up. We did Micron back in, before that in June. Oh, that shouldn't be there. Why is that one like, oh, whatever. Anyway, before that, we had Delta. We did a review. That's always useful to watch. We did PetMed. We did Delta again because it was so stupidly low that we did it twice. We did UNG, which we covered nicely. Walgreens is still down in the dumps. Disney is still down in the dumps, but great. Cisco, Intel has much picked up since June. Cisco is blown away. I think Cisco's had huge numbers as far as I remember. Yep. So in June, we jumped on Cisco, and here's Cisco now. So the idea of a top trade is it's a set and forget kind of trade. The idea is just say, take it, great odds of success, come back in 6 months and make sure it's on track, and then just let it go. And we are 60 to 70% successful in our, I'm sorry, we're usually 70 to 80. We were a little bit below 70 this time in the first half of this year. But that's a great thing to follow. It's always a great thing to go after, and all you have to do is go to the top of our main page, and members only top trades right there. All right, and webinars. Wow, what happens if you click on webinars? Wouldn't it be funny if I see myself right now? That's not going to happen. All right, oh, there you go. So there's all the webinars, and then we got portfolio reviews. Wow. It's fun to have people because I didn't even know they're doing it. Okay, so it's inconsistent apparently, but they do have an October portfolio review and a September portfolio review. So once in a while they decide to put portfolio reviews in there. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. You can always find a portfolio review though, because you just go to the week. If you go to Phil's posts and just go to the week that the option expiration week of any given month. So in other words, if you want to find September, you just go back. Well, whatever month this is going to be. Oh yeah, it's October. So here's September 26th, that's too soon, 24th. So figure September 18th, 19th, whatever is when the expiration day was. That would mean probably that Tuesday we do the portfolio review. And there it is, see? All you gotta do is figure out what the expiration week was, and you'll find the portfolio review for any month. All right, well, that's a little bit of overtime. So thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate it, and I'm sorry about the delay. But we will do this again next week, all right? Now, next week is gonna be crazy. Oh my God, we'll be post-election. Oh shit, Wednesday is gonna be post-election and pre-Fed. So, holy cow, tell your friends, bring your wives. It's gonna be crazy next week. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks, have a good day.